right, welcome to episode 7 of Heath Barn Hoopcast. This episode is with former Illini Nate Mast, and I think this episode is a very special one because I've had on, the leading scorer in Illinois history, the leader in steals and assists in Illinois history, and I think every player's got a different journey to become an Illini, and Nate's is a very, very special one, and it shows what hard work and dedication where it can get you. And it was not easy for him. He was a walk-on initially, but we'll get into all that. But I think it's also a good one for kids to listen to because it shows you, again, hard work, not giving up, things like that. But it's a very inspirational story, but it's also Nate's got a great sense of humor. He tells great stories about his time with the Illini. He did some big things coaching after he was done, and we get into all that. But his story is amazing. That's what we kind of talk about interviewing all these former Illini. Again, whether you're Deion Thomas, the career scoring leader, or you're a guy that had to fight and scratch and claw just to be a walk-on, and then eventually carve out a very important role for the Illini, like this guy. Every story is different, and they're all a lot of fun. So I want to thank Nate for coming on. He was a great, great, great guest. Hopefully we can do some more stuff with him in the future, but hope you guys enjoy the episode. It's episode 7 of Heath Barn Hoopcast with Nate Mast. All right. Nate Mast, thanks a lot for coming on, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. We were just talking a little bit here beforehand, and yeah, this is fun. I enjoy listening to you guys and all your stories and everything like that. What's one thing I'm finding out is everybody's got their own story, and their own different way they got to Illinois and all those kinds of things. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to some of the other guys talk and tell stories, and like I mentioned to you, you get Illini basketball players together. That's what we like to do, is talk about the good old days. So this
right.
is right up our alley.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, maybe just kind of give everybody a little bit of background on you who may not be as familiar with Nate Mast. Maybe
Sure.
Where you grew up and all that good stuff, and then we'll dig into everything else.
Well, slightly different than some of the other big name players you've had on your podcast. I'm a Champaign guy. I'm a local. Grew up in Champaign. Grew up watching the Flying Illini teams. Went to Champaign Central. I guess Edison Middle School, Champaign Central, and of course, with my stature of 5'10" and probably 120 pounds when I was leaving high school. Yeah. I didn't have as many scholarship opportunities. Actually, I can't even count them on one hand because it was 0. So what I put my efforts into is deciding where I want to get my degree from. And if there's one place that I could be fortunate to play basketball, would be at the University of Illinois. I'd always wanted to run out of that tunnel, just like those Flying Illini guys did. And so I put everything I had towards trying to make that dream come true. And hey, things fell into place. And I can't tell you how much being a part of that team from 98 through technically 02 has impacted my life, and from all aspects. So that's kind of a short rendition of my background and how I got to the Illinois.
Yeah. You say you went to Edison Middle School?
Yep. Garden Hills, Edison, Champaign Central.
Gotcha. I remember there was a tournament. Did you guys, when you were in middle school, have this tournament like to kick off the season kind of that was in Champaign? It was like Jefferson, Franklin, Edison. And then because not that long after you were there, I was coaching a middle school or in Paris, and I wanted them to have some good competition, so we went to that like for 2 years, and I just wanted to give them a little taste of something a little different, right off the bat.
Right.
Yeah. I remember James Kenny. I don't know if you remember him, but he was
Oh yeah.
he was the same. They're the same age as those boys and everything. But that was a great tournament, and it was always those 3 Champaign teams and us, and it was that was about the best competition they had all year. So when you were at Central, well, I mean, what kind of player were you? How'd you do? How was all that? I don't really know how else to ask.
It's interesting because my oldest son's going to be a junior and my daughter's a freshman. I got a 5th grader, so they hate to hear what it was like for you back in high school. But
Mm-hmm.
my freshman year, I had some really good players to look up to at Central, and I was just talking to Coach Nagy about this. Is a name Jason Simsprot, who went to play at San Diego State. He played at Champaign Central under Tom Croy, and he was just just a tough, talented competitor, point guard, scorer, distributor. And then my freshman year, there was a guy named Anthony Coombs who was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Coombs was on Henson's staff as well. So
Right.
I had a couple pretty good guys that I'm looking at as a 7th grader, 8th grader, 9th grader, thinking, okay, I want to be as good as those guys.
Yeah.
And I played freshman year. We had a really good freshman team. I played a little bit of JV. I didn't play any varsity, but we lost a lot of seniors my sophomore year. And I was starting point guard my sophomore year. And I told my kids this last night. You can learn a lot from winning and you can learn a lot from losing. I think my memory is not as good as it used to be. I think we went 2-20 my sophomore year at Champaign Central.
Yeah.
And then got a little better, had some better classes underneath us. And by my senior year, we were a solid team. But to get out of regionals, we had to go through Decatur MacArthur, Stephen Decatur, we had Tyrese Bryson and those guys, Michael
Mm-hmm.
Wild. We could never beat them. So did not have any sort of run in high school, like my graduating team captain partners over there at Peoria Manual did in their 4 years of high school. But
yeah.
But I mean, heck, iron sharpens iron, and you learn lessons, and you figure out what you got to do to get better. And I kind of had the same story at the U of I, because freshman year we had Kevin Turner and Matt Heldman and Brian John. We had 7 seniors, and we won the Big Ten that year. Of course, I was just a practice player. And then sophomore year, we go to last in the Big Ten, but we make that run in the Big Ten tournament where we beat 3 ranked teams and almost beat Michigan State to go to the NCAA tournament. And by the time
you could tell
seniors again, we're back on top being Big Ten champs again. So we've been at the top and the bottom and the top.
Right. You could tell that that sophomore year, though, you guys were going in the right direction. I mean, and we'll get to Long Kruger here a little bit later, but
sure.
So now you said you didn't have any offers. Were you tempted at all to try to go to like a smaller college and where you would get to be like a regular player, things like that, more playing time? Were you want to? Did that ever really cross your mind, or were you always just thinking?
Well,
talk about at the beginning.
Yeah, obviously, being a Division I basketball player was just a dream and a goal, and actually a little chip on my shoulder to try to prove people wrong. I didn't really contemplate, do I try junior college or go play at a D2 or D3, which, hey, you still got to make those teams too. It's not like you just get to be on a team if you want to be on a team. I always tell the story, and if you know the name Al Nudo, who was the Parkland basketball coach when I was coming out of high school, I think we would both laugh at this today. He told me he didn't think I was good enough to play at Parkland, and they're a Division II JUCO. So I think I knew that if I could make the Illinois team, even as a walk-on, that would be fulfilling. I really wasn't like, let me go try to play somewhere and up my stock and try to move on from there. So I was more focused on academics and if I play basketball, great. So,
Right. What was your what'd you study in college? Uh-oh,
believe it
he's
or
laughing.
not, believe it or not, I've got a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies, and I have a master's degree in Architectural Studies.
Oh
So
man.
those are both just decorations at this point because I'm not
Yeah.
doing architecture.
Man, pretty
So,
impressive decoration. So
thanks.
it,
Expensive ones.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Okay. I'm kind of interested in this process. So let's say explain to people that might not know the walk on process. Like how do you yeah, this what's all that look like? Like as
Well,
far as
I'll tell you the route I took, and maybe I had a little bit of luck or destiny on my side. But my senior year, and I'm not going down memory road here, but it was a cold night in January in 1997, and it was a snowstorm, and the only game that happened that night was Central versus Centennial. And I somehow luckily made a buzzer beater half court shot to beat them. And
yeah,
with that sort of publicity, obviously it gets on the news, and the coaching staff, Lon Kruger, and then they see that, they know who you are. They certainly aren't recruiting me. But the summer after my senior year, I went to try to meet with Coach Kruger and tell him, I'd love to be a part of this team. I know you can't promise it. I took my parents. We sat in his office. He was nice enough to give us that opportunity, and basically
so
told me to.
you saw it, you seeked him out, like you went to him, or did they come to you,
I
or
I
how?
went to him. They did send me. I think I had my picture in the paper, and their coaching staff sent it to me with a nice letter. Just it was just a nice thing to do.
Right.
But it certainly wasn't saying, "Hey, we hope you come here next year." So,
Yeah.
um, but really, what I did is I spent that whole summer between my senior year of high school and freshman year at Illinois, and I was in the gym everywhere that those current basketball players were playing. I was there. If it was at Impey, is what we knew it, over at the rec center at Illinois. If it was outside at the courts, I would try to get in games and I would try to guard those guys. And I think I built a little bit of a rapport with them. They got to know who I was. And then they got into preseason conditioning. Well, we haven't had tryouts yet. So I'm not on the team, but
Right.
I talk to those guys. I find out that they're doing conditioning at 5:30 a.m. at Huff Hall. I'm there in the gym watching them if they'll let me, and I'm writing down everything they do, and then I
Uh-huh.
go do it on my own. So
Oh
I
man.
tried to give myself every avenue to be seen and also to do what they do so that I was prepared. So fast forward to, I don't know, probably was in September, maybe October. Um, they have walk-on tryouts, just like any high school has a walk-on tryout or a tryout. And I'm pretty sure there was, I don't know, 40 to 50 kids wanting to try out.
Uh-huh.
And we were in Huff Hall, and they got the assistant coaches in there working us out. And every now and then, some players would pop in. And again, when I say a little bit of luck and a little bit of destiny, I had the best tryout you could possibly have. I did not miss. My teams won every game. I was energetic. I was talking. I was trying to lead. And then
Right.
as some of the players would come in there and watch, they'd be cheering. If I make a good play or make an open shot, they'd start juicing me up a little bit. So then the coaches kind of saw that they were cheering for me a little bit. So I was one of four walk-ons who made it that year. Now they also had some preferred walk-ons already on the team,
Yeah.
um, and it helped. Here were the couple things that were helpful. One, there were seven seniors who were going to play a lot of minutes. They didn't want them to practice a lot every day, so they needed some more bodies out there to help some of the younger guys.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then we had Corey Bradford, who was here,
Right.
but he wasn't eligible to play that freshman year. So I'm kind of giving you a long answer and
Oh
pivoting
no.
here, but
Oh, this is good, man.
The walk-ons plus a couple preferred walk-ons plus like Corey Bradford, David Freeman. We composed what we called the gold team. And there's usually the first team's a blue team, the second team's the white team, and then we had the infamous gold team with the old gold pennies. And
Right.
I mean, it was just a group of guys who were hungry to play. But no, I think the whole walk-on process, I don't know, it was a culmination of some effort and some luck. And the other piece was Jelani Boleen, if you remember that name, was the backup point guard to Matt Heldman. He had just separated his shoulder and was going to be out. So they also kind of needed a few more ball handlers, which was right up my alley. So,
Right.
but hey, if I did not get the call that I made the team from that walk-on tryout, then I was prepared to say I'm just going to be a fan and a student. But it worked out. So
That's great. And it sounds like you kind of, you're saying luck, 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 but it sounds like you kind of made your own luck because you were
yeah,
busting your
I
butt.
worked for it.
Yeah.
I worked for it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Did you now, well, something else too. Yes, you were a walk-on, but I mean, you played your sophomore through senior year. You played in 72 games, so it's not you weren't like an average walk-on, obviously, and you even started 4 games when you were a sophomore. So,
Right.
talk
Yeah.
about kind of as we're moving along here, being thrust into more of a and kind of a role there your sophomore year.
Yeah. So going back to the high school comparison to college, we were really good my freshman year, but I didn't have much of a role to us being really young my sophomore year. And Frank Williams wasn't able to play, and Corey Bradford and Serge were kind of our point guards.
Mm-hmm.
So there was opportunity for me there, and we were just a very young, raw team. Um, and I mean, like I just did what I knew to do was listen to coach, be an extension of him on the floor, try to get guys to be where they're supposed to be and lead at the point guard position. And I think again, going back to a little bit of luck, Serge had a bad sprained ankle during the Big Ten season, and Coach Kruger was trying to decide who's going to start, and he tried different teams in practice, and he said every time I put Nate on the blue team would win. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate and respect that Coach Kruger did make a big deal out of it. And I think as a walk on, your mindset is, am I really supposed to be here? I mean, I'm not really, wasn't sought out. I don't have a scholarship, but hey, you're starting at the University of Illinois. Those are the
Yeah.
things that you wish you could go back and grasp, how
Mm-hmm.
great that was.
Yeah.
And that, again, my kids don't like to hear it, but I tell them that now. It's like, hey, look at me. I
Yeah.
started in the Big Ten for a little bit. And granted, we
Right.
probably I think we went 0-4 in my 4-game stint, but hey, I was still out there. So,
Well, and I feel like that's the year that you kind of took on a fan favorite role, because I mean, it's a tale as old as time, but you kind of the underdog role there, and everything like that, and you just played your ass off all the time. So I mean, that attracts fans, and I think that because you were, I mean, obviously a fan favorite, and for you to be able to experience something like that at University of Illinois just must have been a dream come true. I mean, that's not even a question, really. That's just saying that. I mean, obviously, that had to have been just an amazing experience for
yeah, and I mean, that's all I could do, right? The only thing that I was in control of was playing my butt off. I could only shoot so good. I
you, right?
wasn't going to jump higher than these guys. I wasn't stronger than these guys. I was quick. I had that going for me. And I just, I didn't want to accept defeat. So, and that's probably the only way I could earn respect from my teammates. And I guess ultimately the fans is if you don't go out there and sacrifice everything you got, dive on the floor, take it in the chin,
Yeah,
not going to survive. So
right.
we had some learning curves as a team that sophomore year from, Frank and I got in a fight. Archibald hated me. We had some riffs our
Hey, let's
sophomore
hey,
year,
get into that. Let's go. What we got
but
now?
I'm telling you, because of those things that sophomore year,
Yeah,
man, we gelled and united junior year and senior year. So you
right.
got to go through that adversity. Um, but I'll be happy to tell you the story of how Frank attacked me.
I can, see, I can just see this now. Um, Probably just you're just probably like a little just annoying little gnat that practices
Bingo.
just a pest, and probably
Bingo.
getting under his skin a little bit. But yeah, let's hear it. Go ahead.
So this was after um, sophomore year when Frank was a practice player, and now he's getting ready to be an eligible player. So it was the summer between my sophomore and junior year, and we were, we played pickup. There was limited workout times back then postseason, so we're definitely playing pickup ball, which is the most fun. Your body's recovered. You feel strong and fast and athletic again because you're not beat down with a Big Ten basketball season. So it was probably the first one of the summer, and you're pretty dead on. I was a pest to Frank because
Yeah,
hey, he's this star coming in here to play, so I
and
wasn't
he's
gonna just
also
let him.
not realizing at the time probably that you're making him better. It's like
Well, so I'm obviously guarding him, and I'm checking the ball, and I'm I'm fouling him. That's what I learned in college, folks. I learned how to foul and get away with it. That's what you learn how to do. Learn how to play without getting called for fouls. And he had reminded me several times to quit fouling him, or
mhm.
he's going to beat my ass. So I
Yeah.
took that ball and said, Frank, get used to it because I'm going to foul your ass all summer long. And he just hauled off and slapped me across the face. And then, of course,
Oh yeah.
we couldn't even get into a fight because by that time, Lucas and Arch and Griff and Serge were all kind of like getting into a big pile. And
Yeah.
uh, the best part about this is we had a couple recruits upstairs watching us. I'm pretty sure Sean Harrington was in there,
Yeah.
maybe Brett Melton, you know,
Yeah.
and they're probably in there watching this, going like, "What in the heck is going on in this team?" So I got an earful from Coach Kruger that I needed to cut that stuff out because I'm sure they were saying I was instigating it. So I
Right.
gladly took my chewing, and
Well, okay.
I
Whenever so those guys were coming in to split it up to separate you guys like right away, or
yeah. By that time, it just became everybody rolling around on the ground. I mean, there's no fist punching. It's kind of you get into lockup mode.
oh yeah,
So
yeah. Okay, I have a
we
question.
won't. Yeah.
Okay, explain a little bit. You talked about how learned how to foul in college. Maybe expand on that a little bit.
Well,
Like holding, or just like whenever you're going through a pick, or how.
yeah.
Yeah, explain that a little bit.
It's anticipation, and it's the phrase I always remember is do your work early, so you're prepared for what's getting ready to happen. If you let yourself get pinned behind somebody, or you get separation when you're trying to guard them, and then you got to run through screens, you're dead. So yes, if somebody's trying to set you up to come off a double screen or a stagger or whatever, you got to figure out a way to bump back or grab a little without basically wrapping them around like a bear hug.
Hmm.
Um, I can tell you who taught me that for the first time was Jerry Hester. I'm on that goal team my
Like,
freshman year, and I'm trying to guard
yeah.
his 6'6" tall butt. So his
Mhm.
his butt when he stops is about my chest
Yeah.
if I'm running full
Yeah.
speed. So I'm sitting here trailing him on the baseline, getting ready to go on a double baseline screen, and he stops, lets me run into him, bounces me back, and then he takes off. Well, heck, by the
Yeah.
time he takes off, I'm 8, 10 feet from him. So that's what
Right.
I mean about you learn the tricks, how to use your body, what tactics somebody might do to try to do that, um, and hell, how to slap a little and get your hand on
Hmm.
the ball. Just things that you don't realize and understand. I mean, everybody goes from high school to college says the pace of the game. I think even TJ, when you had him on the
Right.
show, was one thing he just wasn't ready for was the pace of the game. It's true. You can't prepare for it
Right.
because when I was on
Everybody.
that when I
Well,
was
I
on
mean,
that gold team, just
yeah.
trying to get shots off against, Jared G and those guys, I'd just be happy if I hit the backboard. And
Yeah.
then finally one day, Coach Kruger said, "Nate, try to make it." And I was like, "All right, maybe I can get this shot off and make it." So
Right.
yeah,
Um,
there's definitely that learning curve.
yes, for sure. Um, okay. Well, when you were, how much weight did you have to put on from, he said you, I'm sure you were exaggerating when you say you were a buck 20, but how much weight did you put on in college, like from high school to college?
I think I was probably 5'10", 140 when I
Yeah.
got to Illinois. And back then, the weight program was much different. There's a big old tub of creatine right there at the door for you to
Hmm.
scoop in and eat.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely brought our team bench press and squat press average down. Co-
Yeah.
Corey Bradford and Serge and those guys, I mean, they're easily benching 225 for reps.
Right.
If I got to that 185 one rep max, I was excited. And
Yeah.
throwing up 135 as a freshman first walking into the gym was probably where I was at. But no, I think I finished my senior year playing weight. Maybe I grew an inch, so I'll just say I was 5'11", 170, 175.
Right.
But no, I'm sure it was a 30-pound swing and me trying to eat everything I can to put calories on and
Yeah.
lift, and
I think
it's hard.
we're the same age. I remember the creatine days, man. It just, because I was
It's-
scrawny. I'm 6'3", but I was real scrawny, and I remember, oh yeah, creatine that was the thing. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I tried
Well,
that. Did you try that weight gain stuff that tasted horrible, like
oh
these
yeah, yeah,
milkshakes? Straight to hell, yeah.
yep. Did
Come a
all
long
that.
way, then, man.
Did all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
So
Okay. Well, you're talking about guard and foul and stuff like that. Who's the toughest player you had to guard in a game, in the Big Ten game, or just any game? Hell, doesn't have to be Big Ten. Just in college, I guess.
toughest for me to guard is usually the guy who's 6'4" or 6'5". I'm thinking of we played Kansas over at Kemper Arena.
Hmm.
What was his name? I somehow always got stuck on the wing. It's not Greg Anthony, but anyway, he's the 6'4" guy. So if I get down in a guarding stance at 5'11" to guard a 6'4" guy, he can just raise up and shoot over me. So I've got to get up into him and put pressure on the ball so that he can't just shoot it, but then he's just going to take off. So now I have to be ready to cut him off.
Hmm.
So those were some of my any of the taller wings I got stuck on, and we usually try to switch so I didn't get stuck on them. Ty Calderwood at Wisconsin was always a problem for me, mostly when I had the ball because he kept taking my ball, but he was also hard to guard.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I do think, and I tell everybody this, that I would always rather practice every day and not be, practice with great players every day and not be the best player because those other players are going to bring you up. I mean, guarding Frank Williams every day is probably the best thing that I could have done because
Correct. Absolutely.
not too many could do what he naturally could do. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Um.
kids trying to decide where to go play. If you want to go be the man at a not so great school, then you'll probably only get a little bit better. But if you go somewhere where there's some equal or better competition, then you'll all kind of raise to the top, so to
Yeah.
speak.
There's a lot of kids that need to hear that now these days, especially. But um, who? Okay, let's talk about practice a little bit because I'm assuming with your role, uh, did you have to do things where, like, who's the best player you pretended to be at a practice? I guess is what
That's that is an easy one, my friend. To Mr. Joe Crispin from Penn State, because
yeah.
everything they did was for him, and I basically got to have the green light from anywhere for all
Yeah.
of practice. Yeah, that's we would fight to say who gets to be Crispin today. It's me.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Coach Kruger. Your first 3 years, you had Coach Kruger. Then your senior year, you had Coach Self. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I was there a super senior year since I needed another year to. I switched majors my sophomore year, and then I went back, and of course I just got to be a 5-year super senior. So my
Gotcha.
5th year, I technically was out of eligibility because I played like 2 minutes my freshman year against Indiana. That's a whole nother story. But my
Hey.
5th year, I was a student assistant coach with Coach Self and those guys, which was
Yeah.
also a lot of fun because I was in their locker room, not the players' locker room.
Gotcha. What's the Indiana story? Is that
Well, you never know when or how long a walk-on's going to be on the team. So we were beating Indiana pretty bad at home. In
yeah.
my freshman year, that group of walk-ons, there was like 4 of us. We got to rotate who dressed for a home game. And I just happened to be dressed the night that we played Indiana at home, and we beat them pretty bad. And I got put in at the end of the game for my first time ever getting into a game. So I'm in the book, and that's my year of eligibility. I didn't get in any other game that year. I didn't travel. I didn't do anything else. So we kind of pushed to see if I could get that year back, but I don't know. It never went anywhere. So
That's interesting.
one year, I don't know what my playing time was. We could probably go look at the stat sheet. Probably a minute and a half.
Right. Huh. Well, maybe explain Coach Kruger, because I thought he was. I mean, I think obviously he's a great coach. So maybe explain his style and maybe a story about him too, if you got one.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, here I am, Nate Mast. 1 game played, 2 minutes. There you go.
Did they round up?
Yeah, I guess so, because I know it wasn't a full 2. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I think Coach Kruger has some very close similarities to Coach Henson because Coach Kruger also does not cuss.
Really? I didn't realize that.
His method, he would grit his teeth and he would say, "Dadgummit, you knocked that off," and that you knew that he was very upset. He didn't have to say anything else besides "Dadgummit."
Really?
We all knew that. That was our locker room mockery, is telling each other to "Dadgummit, cut that out." But hey, people always ask me what was the difference between Coach Self and Coach Kruger. Both great minds, both great players, both great men. Coach Kruger, I'd say, probably was more a businessman, like your boss. You don't really want to be stuck in his office too long because you might have done something wrong. And then Coach Self, I'd say, is more of the players coach. Now this was at that time. I mean, I'm sure Coach Kruger has coached for so long. I'm sure
Yeah.
made some connections with players. But Coach Self is the guy you want to go up a couple hours before practice and mess with him in his office to see what he's doing, what stories he's got to tell. Or so I think when people say players coach, it's just that coach that you want to be around when you're not playing basketball.
Yeah,
And
you
I
can
think,
be a little bit.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I give all credit for my college playing days to Coach Kruger for giving me a chance. And it's not a big deal or not, but eventually I did earn some scholarship as a walk-on for a couple years, and that wouldn't have happened without Coach Kruger as well. So I'm deeply indebted to the man and greatly respect him. So
Right. I felt like his like in game. Okay, between these two, I don't really want you to compare and contrast the two. Just what was, because obviously they're both great coaches, but with Kruger, what did you think his main strength was? Was it like in-game strategy or just because he's been extremely successful wherever he's been?
Right.
Atlanta Hawks notwithstanding, but in college he's been amazing. So I mean, what do you think? What made him has made him a great coach?
Well, I mean, I think they're both pretty good at player management and figuring out how to put guys in the best position to score. I think Coach Kruger might focus more on how to get the exact shot, running a play to get this, whereas Coach Self maybe might run something that has options. I mean, they're both going to have options. So I probably didn't get to see as much with Coach Kruger just because, I mean, I wasn't in the game a lot. I wasn't on the blue team a lot. But I think that, just coaches who've been able to stay in the business that long and win like they do, you've got to be able to adjust and adapt and find the right players and put the right people in the right places. And I think I'm not comparing them, but I think they both are pretty good at that.
Right. Okay, so Kruger, we learned that he said dadgummit never before. So you got it. How about a Bill Self story that sticks out? Anything at all?
Shoot. I mean, there's a different type of chewing from Coach Self, and he might just invent words, and I probably can't say some of them on here. But the thing about Coach Self was he would just he'd say things in such a way that would just make you like question your manhood. And you know who else would be good at that? If you remember the name Billy Gillespie.
Yeah.
He'd walk by and say something like that play was so bad your mom is probably disappointed in you, or so, just something to make you like, dang, what was it that bad?
Right.
But Coach Self stories, man, I don't know that there's any that I can just point to that are suitable for young audiences.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if we come back to that, if I think of something, I'll come back to it.
Okay, I'm big on Mount Rushmores and stuff like that because that's the hip thing to do now. But I don't want you to feel like you're excluding anybody or anything. But how about favorite teammates while you were there? And again, I don't want anybody to get hurt feelings over this.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't think it's a big deal either. Really, that's why it's like just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's stories that if we're all sitting around that you can think of that I can't think of right now, but I will tell you my freshman year, the guy who kind of took me under his wing and was kind of like my guy was Victor Chukudebe. I don't know if you remember that name, but Springfield, he used to play at Springfield Lamphere, I think.
Yeah.
He gave me the nickname Littlefoots, which has basically stuck throughout my playing career. That's what actually it's kind of evolved. People call me Littlefoots, Little Toe, Toes, Footsies. I mean, I was wearing size 9.5 or 10 shoes, and the next biggest size was probably 13s or 14s.
Right.
So
that's a good name. Chukudebe, I haven't thought that's a name.
So
that's
Chooks is my guy from the start. I have to put Archibald in there because I got to tell you, we had a hate-love relationship because he absolutely hated me when he was a freshman. He thought I shouldn't be there. He was mad because he was skinnier than I was. He couldn't outbench me. He thought I was a pest. And he may have wanted to fight me too. I don't know. But by the time we got through that and we were roommates on some trips, then would mess with Lucas Johnson. And when we're rooming together, he always goes, "Hey, best roommate ever. You ready to go to our room?" And Lucas would get mad because he's not coming.
Jealous of your bromance,
yeah. So, and Arch had strong hair game. He had the frosted tips back then, and I used a little bit of his.
And then you were jealous.
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, can you do that for me?"
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So Chooks and Arch. Well, I got two more.
Yeah.
Man, it gets kind of hard from there. I think I have to say Corey Bradford just because, I mean, he was my guy in the gym. We would shoot forever before and after practice. And and even to this day, he keeps in touch the most, and just a nice, caring guy, teammate. Never is always positive. So those are always good guys to have around. And, I mean, there could be a bunch as my other one. Sean Harrington. We were kind of what we called backcourt. The two guards on the white team who always had to play Frank and Corey on the blue team.
Yeah.
So we always tried to hype up our backcourt versus their backcourt.
Yeah.
So, and I can't not have Lucas and I mean, there's too many.
Right.
I've never been on a team where we all could just get along and not care who you're hanging out with and checking in on each other, and even to this day. So
yeah, it was a great group. Well, then your senior year, maybe talk a little bit about how far you guys made it and everything.
Yeah, and that's kind of the culmination. And then think about it. Lon Kruger left.
Yeah.
Coach Self came in, and hey, here's your Coach Self story. He came in that summer. Again, there's rules. So first, we're just playing pickup. There's only so many hours a week you could do individuals and groups of 4 or whatever it was. And his staff's there, and they're up there looking through the blinds like they're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And they come down there and they're going to make a point. And Coach Self gets us all on the line and say, hey guys, we're just going to do some conditioning. Y'all aren't playing very well at all. This is just a waste of time. Let's see how good a shape we're in. I'm going to tell you, that's probably the day we all thought, who the hell this guy is, because he's going to kill us. And
Yeah.
we had guys falling out. We were learning all the new sprints we're going to have to do, and it was one of the hardest days, but one of the best memories, because you go back to the locker room and you start making fun of who fell out, who puked, who quit, things like that.
Right.
That's a great Coach Self story.
Yeah.
It even led to boot camp, where he came out in a war shirt and all that. So he had us rallied around him.
Right. I know that. When Marcus was on here, he talked about boot camp, and apparently that's a real big deal. The jargon too. So did he have his own? Do all these coaches have their own jargon for when you're conditioning, like for the sprints and stuff like that? Because
and then it kind of became after 9/11 happened in 01. It's like, well, we can't really use boot camp and talk about war and stuff because the country was in. So it's basically conditioning, however you want to call it or disguise it, but it's getting down to putting your team through some adversity while you get in shape. That's the other reason we couldn't put on weight. You put on weight in the summer, and then you get in there in boot camp and you lose 20 pounds from all the conditioning and everything.
Yeah. But well, how about a highlight for you as a player on the floor? What's your favorite thing that happened to you while you're on the floor playing for Illinois?
Oh, well, I mean, there's no denying having my name called in the starting lineup in the assembly hall at that time, that I grew up watching players on that court and idolizing the Andy Kaufmans and the Kenny Battles and those guys. That obviously is my highlight. And I think just having the respect of the like my teammates wanted me to do well, right? I mean, if I'm in it when we were good, my playing time was when it was at the end of the game. That's what I'd come into the locker room and say, guys, we need to get up by about 20 so that I can get in the game.
That's right.
And when I get in there, I'm shooting that thing. So let's go.
Yeah.
So, just that kind of cheering for each other and mutual respect and brotherhood. I mean, that's what wins and championships and those things obviously make it memorable, but the things you really focus on are those bigger picture things and memories in the locker room and those sorts of stories.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, like maybe when you got done at Illinois, you definitely got into coaching. Do you want to talk a little bit about, you were a grad assistant, right, for Coach Self?
Yeah. So I had to sit down with coach. So, like I said, my 5th year, I was a student assistant coach, whatever, glorified manager, basically. But
Yeah.
finishing my degree, and I said, Coach, I think I want to get into coaching. And I've had these uh, internships that I was interviewing for. One was in Atlanta and one was in West Palm. Because I grew up in Champaign, I lived there all through my high school and college career. So I was thinking it's probably time to get out of hometown. And he
Uh-huh.
sat me down. He said, "Do you really want to coach, Nate, or do you want to coach at Illinois?" And that one kind of hit me between the eyes because he's like, "Do you want me to get you a job at a JUCO in Pennsylvania where there might be 200 people in the gym and you're all over the place and somewhere you don't know?" And I said, "You're right. I've been a little bit spoiled by being at the University of Illinois." Which would come back again later when I did get into coaching. So I actually chose to go be an intern with an architect down in West Palm Beach, Florida for a couple years. And
Really?
after I did the internship, it was time for me to go back to graduate school. And interestingly enough, Billy Gillespie got the job at UTEP and called
Mm-hmm.
me and asked me if I wanted to go there and be a grad assistant. And I mean, you never know where your fork in the road's going to happen, but I said, Coach G, I don't think I need to go to UTEP because they don't have an architecture program, and I think I need to just go back with Coach Self at Kansas, get my architecture degree, and then decide what I want to do. But who ended up going to UTEP with Jarens or with Coach G was Jarens. Of
Uh-huh.
course, Jarens followed him from UTEP to Texas A&M to Kentucky, and obviously Jarens has had other stops in his coaching career, and so has Coach G. But I
Right.
chose and asked Coach Self if I could come be a graduate student at Kansas. And again, back then, there's not a paid GA position. So again, I was kind of a glorified graduate student
Right.
assistant coach or manager. So I paid my way to go back to grad school, but to get back into coaching, because once you get out, it's hard to get back in. And Coach
Yeah.
Self gave me that door back in. It's probably 2 or 3 years. Yeah, I got there in 04, 05. I graduated in 02.
Yeah.
And so I got my
Okay.
master's degree. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Okay. So this one backtrack to say. Okay. So you get done. You go to Florida for, did you say almost 2 years?
Yep.
And then you hear from Gillespie and you decide to get a hold of Coach Self. And
Yep.
then, so even after, okay, so how are you still a grad student though? Like at all that time later?
Well, I mean, I was a non-traditional graduate student. I got my bachelor's. I went and did an internship, and then I applied to get into grad school at Kansas. And so I was, 25,
Yeah.
26, 27, working for them in those years. We won
Right.
three
Oh my.
Big 12 championships or two Big 12 championships while I was there.
Yeah.
Um,
But when you're down in Florida, so are you kind of getting the itch while you're down there? And that's,
yeah, I was missing it. That's
yeah.
what I needed to do, get away and, you know, 8 to 5 and
But
being
they
an
came to you,
architect. Oh,
but they came to you, or did you, uh,
oh no, I had to ask if there's
you
an
start putting out
opportunity.
feelers? But
Yeah.
when you got,
And again, I mean, I just
got
called Coach Self.
yeah,
I didn't
hook
know
me up.
Coach Weber, so I wasn't going back to Illinois
Right.
because
Yeah.
Coach Self had already went to Kansas.
Yeah.
Um, so I got there, had 3 good years there, and then I was at that crossroads again. Do I want to be an architect or do I want to coach? Well, I'd already learned if you get out of coaching, it's really hard to get back in.
Yeah.
So I decided to be a coach, and I took my first coaching job at the University of Arkansas Fort Smith. I think making maybe about $22,000 a year back in 2008. So um,
Really.
went JUCO there for 2 years. Took the
That's
Parkland head. What's that?
your first school there in Arkansas. That's a JUCO.
Yeah, it was a junior college that actually was getting ready to transition to NCAA Division II, which they did
Gotcha.
after I left. And I took
Okay.
the job at Parkland College back in Champaign as a head coach. I had gotten married. We had a kid in Arkansas. It's kind of natural to come back home
Mm-hmm.
and be the head coach there at Parkland for 2 or 3 years, and then you really start seeing how different levels of basketball compare to the Power Five or Illinois. You,
Right.
you, you
Well,
definitely
yeah.
live, travel, and are treated better
Right. Yeah.
differently than some of those lower conferences or levels.
Right. Um, yeah. Maybe elaborate a little bit on your time at Parkland. I mean, were you happy to be back in Champaign? Um, then you were talking about the talent levels. Like, maybe elaborate a little bit on that because a lot of those guys at JUCOs end up going to big D1 schools after that. So I mean, maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so Parkland is a Division II JUCO, and we can give um, athletic scholarships that cover um, their education, but they're not getting a full ride where it's room and board and everything else. So compare that to a Division I JUCO that back then could give everything. So I'd go recruit guys trying to get the most talented players, and the coach would end up putting me on the less talented guys because the other talented guys are going to a Division I JUCO.
Yeah.
So I cut my teeth on recruiting at Parkland. I was excited to be back, and I was excited to be a head coach because every assistant coach or player who wants to get in this coaching business, they want to have their own program. They want to see if they can do it. They want to implement their own playing styles and teaching styles that they've learned and see if they can be successful as Lon Kruger or Bill Self. So
Right.
I loved it. I would tell you in my playing days and probably 12 years of coaching, the head coach at Parkland was the most rewarding because I truly spent all my time on my guys. It's academics, it's player development, it's people skills. We're doing leadership stuff. When you start getting up to those 4-year schools, you've got fundraising, you've got
Mhm.
politics, you've got donors, you've got basketball and coaching, and your guys becomes a much smaller percentage of your time. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was the closest with my players at Parkland. I got to see how I could implement things I learned from Coach Kruger and Coach Self into my own system. I found out that you at least I do, you recruit yourself. So I looked for players who were like me. They were
Yeah.
kind of hungry, play with a chip on their shoulders, maybe not the most talented guy in the gym, but you put enough together, they're a pretty solid unit.
Hmm.
And I also realized you got to have a couple flyers who you got to take a risk on because they're going to make you better.
Right.
So, no, I think that was the most rewarding time as a coach at Parkland. And then you start thinking, all right, if you want to be a head coach at the big schools, you got to get back to the Division I level.
Hmm.
And going from Parkland to uh, a Division I school it's hard. Everybody wants a coaching job. Everybody
Right.
knows people. So getting on at SIU Carbondale was a bit of timing and connections again with Coach Self.
Yeah.
Since Barry Henson took over there, and he's in Coach Self's coaching tree, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Explain what your role was there at when you got to Southern.
Well, I I decided to take a chance on that opportunity. They they were adding a director of basketball operations role that had not been around at that school. So I was the first director of operations there. And I thought if I'm going to get back into coaching at that level, I need to take the opportunity when it comes. So it was 2012. Um, and so I was probably early 30s thinking, growing family, that we need to do it now or I may never.
Yeah.
So went down there, and that's at a time when Chris Lowry had just left SIU. The
Right.
players were uh, a bit of a handful, so to speak. APR was a problem, so we were just down there to rebuild. So I really spent a lot of my time kind of hand holding and babysitting and trying to rebuild, which was fine. I mean, I kind of did some of that at Parkland, but it was just a different experience, and you start getting to know how this all works at the 4-year level and people jockeying for jobs, and
Right.
I've seen wrong guys get jobs that they shouldn't get just because of who they know, and I've seen
Hmm.
right guys get left behind or cut off just because they weren't part of the next step.
Right.
Coaches get fired for winning and losing. Your head coach gets a job somewhere else and he doesn't take you behind with him, you're left behind.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
I
kind of
can't
a ugly
politics.
industry.
Yeah. Um, well, then maybe keep on rolling here. So then, what led you to stop doing that, and then kind of where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so probably best way to answer that. I had 3 kids. I had lived, like I said, I've lived in Champaign the first 23 years of my life, and my oldest son had probably lived in 4 houses by the time he was 6 years old. So I'm sitting here thinking, all right, if I'm going to make it in this coaching profession, I'm going to have to go somewhere else from here and try to do well to get the next job and move somewhere else from there. And then maybe I get a break
Hmm.
or I don't. So coaching did not feel as much as uh, counting on yourself as it is counting on others.
Right.
And, I had 3 kids. Growing family, didn't want to have to take them out of a bunch more schools, change friends again.
Hmm.
So I had just met Roger Tedrick, who owns the Tedrick Group. Tedrick Insurance Agency. It's a commercial insurance agency. He was a SIU board trustee, actually still is. He's a huge SIU donor, and we got to know each other. And um, basically, whether he offered me a job or I said, "Hey, I think I can do really good things with you," it just depends on who's telling the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I joined here and left SIU 9 years ago now, back in 2015.
Yeah. And then, so then, where are you living now?
Yeah, so our agency's headquartered in Mount Vernon, and we did relocate
Right.
up here just because, I mean, SIU's about an hour from here. So,
Right.
um, and yeah, I mean, I have kind of a big footprint of who we work with. And
Right.
I always tell people, I've played, I've been a coach, I've studied architecture, and now I design, build, and coach group health plans. So it all comes together in my
There
current
you go.
job.
Yeah. Well, doesn't it feel like a relief though that you're not that you're just settled? I mean, you have what to me it's like smart, responsible kind of decision if you have a family. I mean, just you're settled, you're not bouncing around, you're not worrying about this like trying to move up the coach. You can just kind of exhale and just enjoy life and enjoy your family and not be stressed out about all that. I mean, I would think that's how you feel. I mean, is that kind of how you're feeling now?
I did sense some freedom of getting away from which player or coach is going to call me at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, or who needs what. And I chose to make the move because I knew I could bet on myself. I'm
Hmm.
going to get out what I put in this. And you've listened to me talk about myself the last hour or so. That's what I do. I put my mind to it. I put my effort into it, and I think if I do that, I can come out on top. So
Right.
I'm enjoying it. I'm glad I've made the move. I learned a lot about a lot of different businesses. I meet a lot of new people, and I get to see my kids grow up. I've coached some of them in middle school sports, and I'm watching them and grow up in high school, and
Right.
that was the deal breaker, right? Is like I had missed enough soccer games and Saturday morning games because we were at practice or we're on the road for an
Hmm.
away game. So
Yeah.
that made it the easy decision.
Right. Speaking of high school, you ever thought about just going to a decent sized high school and winning about 500 games and retiring,
You know,
you ever get that in?
people think it's that easy, but
Oh, I know. But
I
you're
would
Nate.
tell you,
Yeah.
you, you you think you're stuck with the players that are in your district. Although I see more and more recruiting going on in high school these days than I do in college. But
That is a big
um,
difference. You can pick the players you want in college. High school, you just take the
yeah,
hand dealt, but
yeah, I don't think I did consider that. I did say, what if I kind of just stepped down a level and just got back to focusing on, like I said, Parkland was rewarding to me because I think I helped kids and they helped me. Maybe I could do that at the high school level and get kids to college or junior college. But, you know, there's just a whole lot more that goes into, gosh, I hate to keep pointing fingers, but there's politics. There's a
Mhm.
parent on the school board who's mad that their kid's not playing. And I don't ever want to be in a position where parents who are on a school board are going to fire me because they don't know, you know,
I agree.
they misunderstand what we're
Yeah.
trying to do. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's politics are everywhere.
yeah.
I'm like in small town politics. Hello, they're nuts. They're nuts.
Right.
But well, this has been awesome. But if you don't mind, here I have my son. He's 7, and I've been having him ask a question at the end
Sure.
of it. All right, hang on. I gotta come in the house here real quick. Hey, Stevie. Come here, buddy. This is probably a part I'll have to edit a little bit, but
That's all right.
come here, buddy. Tell Nate hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Got a question for him?
What's your favorite basketball player of all time?
Well, I will tell you, and I didn't get to see him play in person, but the life he lived and his story uh, was documented in a movie, and it's Pistol Pete, the birth of a legend, Pete Maravich.
Ooh.
Uh, the way he played and how skilled he was, he influenced me to work on the things I wasn't very good at, the ball handling, being quick, seeing ahead. So although he was not a player during my time, he was one of probably the biggest influences in my game. I don't know if you got that answer before, but Pete Maravich.
That's a great one. And Stevie, he averaged 44 points a game in college without a 3-point line.
Out the 3-point line. Yep.
Hey, tell him thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, man. Cool. Well, yeah, this has been awesome. Really, really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Let me know what else I can do to help. I mean, I, I think this is a cool way, and I think you're going to get more and more traction, especially as you get these names on there. But
Yeah.
people do like to hear this stuff, especially different decades of
Right.
players. And you know, this is going to sound bad. I don't know if you're still recording, but I had to go remind myself when Ahmad played because it's funny when you're coaching. Like
Yeah.
that was when I was still coaching. There's some gaps in my memory about Illinois teams. I didn't really follow the John Gross teams very well, even the Weber teams too well outside of obviously '05,
Right.
which by the way, we helped recruit those guys. I remember. Let
Yeah.
me put this on your recording. All right, here's a Darren Williams story for you, which he'll
Yeah.
deny. He
He's
may
my.
deny it this day because he probably doesn't remember it, but he was in on his visit, and I don't know if any of the listeners know, but I wore number 5 as Illinois basketball player. And
Yeah.
on his visit in the Ubben parking lot, he came up to me and said, "Nate, would you mind if I wore number 5 when I come here next year?" Of course, I didn't know how great Darren Williams was going to be. I
Yeah. No
said,
kidding.
"Hey, just respect it and do it right." And I'm pretty sure he did.
He listened to you.
But I got to tell you, I love seeing number 5, even though the name says Williams. In my mind, it says Mast on there. But Darren,
Yeah.
those are some great guys. And Luther Head and Roger Powell were on the team my 5th year. They were freshmen,
Right.
so I got to spend a year with those guys and watch them go from little, quiet, shy, scared freshmen to freaking national runners up. So
Right. That's funny, Darren Williams story. He listened to you. Two gold medals and however many All-Star games. And,
oh man, I had no idea he was gonna be that good.
oh yeah. He he's the other number 5 in my opinion.
Appreciate that. Checks in the mail.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, yeah, this has been great, and thanks for coming on. Maybe here at some point we can do something again here, but I'm gonna go ahead and do my close off here, then I'll end the call. But thanks a lot, bud.
You got it. Hey, let me know how I should get you a intro video deal or whatever.
Yeah, I will. I'll send it to you. So
Okay.
all right. Thanks a lot, bud.
All right, man. Take care, John.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.